Hi, everyone. This is your host, Michelle, and you're listening to the Mindful Podcast, the show that aims to break the stigma associated with mental health. On today's episode, we have Rachel Pires, a licensed clinical social worker, mindset coach, and healing practitioner in South Florida. We will discuss holistic integration in mental health, mindfulness, and ways to start your own healing process, connecting the body and soul. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Mindful Podcast. Today we have Rachel Pires. Did I say that right?
Yes,
okay.
correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I know it was a little drive.
Yes. Just a 53-minute drive.
Well, thank you anyways.
Yes.
I know it's kind of late.
Yeah.
Do you mind introducing yourself personally and professionally
Sure.
for our audience?
Sure. I am a licensed mental health. Sorry. No, I'm not. Sorry.
So pause.
Yeah, so let's pause that.
I think you gather yourself in your start.
Yeah. Okay. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I am also a mindset coach. I own a holistic practice called Head and Heart Collective, where we have a group of different therapists that come in and have different specialties within the holistic realm, in addition to providing talk therapy and coaching services.
Nice.
Yeah.
How did you get into all of this?
I think that it finds you. I think that the wellness and the holistic arena find you as much as you find it. I had, when I was back in my grad school days, I happened to have been placed in a health and wellness center at NYU Langone Medical Center, where I was providing talk therapy alongside Reiki masters, reflexologists, and we also had a gynecologist on site. And so it was just kind of like jump in, this is what you're doing. So that was really my first experience with any of those holistic therapies. And what was amazing was not only was I working alongside them, if they had openings, I got to step in and get a Reiki session or a reflexology session. So
I love Reiki sessions.
it was kind of a benefit of working there.
Yeah.
And so it was just kind of complimentary for me to step into providing like mindfulness workshops and empowerment classes to the women that I was working with, alongside providing the talk therapy. And then I graduated and they offered me a position there. And so
nice.
I was able to really just step into that arena full on. And I was there for 4 years and then moved to South Florida.
You left New York.
I left New York and it came to South Florida. And that was during the recession. So finding a position where I was trying to find a position that had the complementary holistic modalities and wasn't really seeing them down here so much. So I stepped into doing some nonprofit work, doing some in-home counseling, got a sense of understanding all of Broward County's systems, from child welfare to juvenile justice, and did that for a minute, but found myself every minute that I could, hey, can we breathe? Hey,
Can we meditate?
let's take a moment to
Okay.
just breathe.
Let's be in the present moment.
Yes, let's
Okay.
just slow it down, I realize we want to argue, but can we argue mindfully? So, it was just kind of part and parcel to, just taking what I learned and just kind of emanating that into all the things that I have been doing. And then I stepped into doing some nonprofit management and overseeing programs and, different grant opportunities. It was really cool to kind of step into all of those pieces. And then again, it just always found me. And then along the way, when I had moved down here, I'd opened up a private practice on the side. So I was doing that for, since the minute that I moved down to South Florida, had a couple clients on the side, had my full-time job, hustle.
Oh my God.
And then the pandemic happened. And I was just like, okay, I think it's time. It's time to step away from this nonprofit
Yes.
arena and do this private practice thing.
Do your own thing.
And in about 2 years prior to the pandemic, I took a yoga teacher training. So that just amplified
Of
my
course.
knowledge and understanding. And fast forward to, here I am today doing
That's
it
amazing.
full time. Yeah.
It sounds like an amazing journey.
Yes, it is a journey. A journey where
is.
doors open and doors close, and
It's a learning
there for the
process,
ride.
right?
Yes.
But I feel like you found your
Yes.
niche.
Yes, 100%.
How do
Yes.
you integrate both Western and Eastern cultures in your practice?
Into the practice? So I was trained and I did my graduate degree at NYU. So they are really psychodynamic psychotherapy focused there. So that really looks at our unconscious patterns and how what we picked up as children unconsciously is still manifesting in our current present day behaviors. So what the cool thing is understanding, okay, so I have this mindset of this is the psychodynamic approach to treatment.
A lot of Freud.
And then lots of Freud.
Okay.
It's great.
Ego,
and then,
super
ego, super ego, unconscious, subconscious. And then I learned that on an Eastern level, we still look at it through that lens and that we are all operating 95% of the time in the subconscious. We've downloaded programs from our childhood up to the age of 7 that those programs were subconsciously, unconsciously
still
continuing to run. So integrating like mindfulness or breath work or meditation, what it's doing is it's pausing that unconscious automatic space that we get into. So it's giving us a moment to pause and to say like, okay, how do I want to respond to this? Do I want to respond to this unconsciously or consciously?
Okay.
So really the merging of those two and bringing in now there's so much science behind the Eastern approaches
Yes.
and the mind-body work and understanding that everything's connected. Everything talks to each part and parcel talks to each other. So it just all blended in and made sense for it to all kind of just morph into all the same thing in some ways.
Okay. When we talk about holistic, what does that really mean in the mental health community?
So the way that I define holistic care is a whole person approach. So we bring in not just the emotional and psychological components, but we also look at the physical components as well as the spiritual components of what that individual is going through and how we can kind of use all of those buckets together to create the most essential kind of cocktail for that person's well-being.
Okay.
So we look at all of those lenses. And as a social worker, I'm trained to understand, when we sit down and we meet with a client, we want to know their biological history. We want to know their psychological history and their social history. And so I think holistic care just takes that lens into every single session and says, hey, what's going on with you on a physical level? Are you experiencing more stomach aches? Is that maybe where your anxiety is showing up for you this week? Instead of it being the running thoughts in your mind, it's showing up in a physical level, on a physiological level
And
in
it
your stomach.
does a lot.
Yes.
There's so much research now that, you think it's just a headache, but it's the stress or
Yes.
anything. It will just affect your back, your stomach.
Yes.
Yeah.
We look at sleep a lot. Sleep is like a
that's a
huge
big
conversation. How you start your day and how you end your day is like too a big conversation that I have with
Really?
my clients, just because, if you didn't have a full night's sleep, you're already starting the day on like 5% battery. Right? And so if you can step back and see like, okay, well, why am I not sleeping? Oh, I was doom scrolling for an hour and a half last night right before bed.
I was on Instagram.
I was on Instagram and like looking at everybody else's lives and comparing them to my life. And then I can't sleep or I'm thinking about what's going on. I couldn't shut off my brain, So what are those different things that you're doing, those different habits, and how are they contributing to all of these different buckets?
Yeah.
What
would you say would be the right amount of sleep that you need? Is like everybody different? Because, you'll have the people that are like, oh, I'm good with 5 hours. And I'm like, I need 8.
Yeah, I think that like the going consensus is like between 7 and 8 hours is kind of like what sleep researchers are saying. But again, everybody's calibrated differently. So I have some clients that are like, Rachel, if I get 5 hours, I'm good. I have other clients that are like, I need 11 hours. And it just depends on you're kind of your own unique sleep signature is kind of how I describe it. And if you're waking up and you're feeling rested, then you got enough sleep.
And that's enough.
So it's kind of like go to bed, for a week, and don't set your alarm in the morning. I know, like, this is not like
my
a
God,
reality that most people can
work.
do, but it's like if you take a vacation, what time do you wake up in the morning if you're on vacation? Naturally.
Well, even from Friday to Saturday, if Saturday I'm off, if I go to bed the latest at midnight, I'm up by 8:30. I usually sleep by 8 hours.
So that's about 8 hours. Yeah.
But I can't wake up at 8 when I work during the
Yes.
week.
It's
so
not.
the alarm always wakes me up.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
Yes. Unfortunately.
But I love when I don't have to set up an alarm.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, there's like that feeling of like, there's no limitations here.
Exactly.
And you're just waking up. And so that's, looking at that as like a piece and an element that affects us emotionally, physically. Yes, we're going to feel drained if we're not getting enough sleep.
Yeah.
Our ability to concentrate is not going to be as clear as we could be if we had that full 8 hours.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
How do you integrate the holistic part into your clients in your private practice?
Into the practice, into sessions.
Mm-hmm.
So usually, like, I like to take some time in the first couple of sessions to understand what their needs are, because every client that comes in has a different need in terms of if they're open to doing more meditation, or say they've never meditated before, I'll talk to them about using the breath. Okay. So that is like one of my go-to, spaces that I love to teach about, and understanding like how, and here I go, I'm going to teach, how, if we can step back and understand every 2.5 hours, our nostrils are alternating.
Wow.
So your left nostril's dominant, and then both are going at the same time, and then your right nostril is dominant. So we have this built-in heating and cooling system in our bodies. And so the reason that breath work is so powerful is we're actually activating and stimulating the body's innate heating and cooling techniques and strategies to manage stress. Yes. Okay. So I'll teach like left nostril breathing, where you're breathing in and out through your left nostril. It's a cooling breath. So if you're having trouble sleeping, I'm gonna say, okay, your prescription for this week before
Just
bed, in bed,
you're
gonna do a meditation. I call them meditations. In bed, you're meditating, but you're gonna breathe for 3 minutes. Set your timer for 3 minutes, and just notice what that does for your body. So again, it's kind of like bringing the subconscious to conscious.
Yeah.
And using that as a tool to say, okay, like this is how we can incorporate it. So I'll typically start a session with a breathwork practice after we've found which breathwork practice they like, because some clients do not like to just sit there and breathe. They need a mantra. They need something to say to themselves, because the mind is going
too much silence,
too fast, too much, too many thoughts.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm gonna try that tonight.
Yeah.
So you said the
left
one.
nostril is calming.
I'm gonna be like,
yes. And then your right nostril is energizing. So like right before you're jumping into a meeting, or you have to have a difficult conversation and you want to be really alert and present, right nostril is where it's at.
Maybe when I wake up.
When you wake up. Yes. It's a perfect breath work to start your day.
Okay.
Just to start it. And then you can do alternate nostril breathing.
What
which
does that
then
do?
your basic, it's just like a reset. It really is, because you're doing both calming and energizing.
I've done some breathing techniques, and some of them make me dizzy because we're not used to doing them.
Yep.
And it's almost like you get high.
Yes. Yes.
It can be scary.
There's like a good feeling with that, but then yes.
Yeah.
So
and
I
you're
think
all drowsy. Like, okay.
It takes like, you have to just find what works for you. And so sometimes if you're breathing too quickly, that could be what's causing like that lightheadedness.
I'm probably doing it wrong. I think I'm doing it right, but I'm not.
Yeah. It's a whole process.
How do you use mindfulness to help your clients?
Sure.
In particular, mindfulness.
Yeah. So if a client's coming to me with anxiety, I like to frame the reason that the mind is experiencing anxiety. So again, it's the mind's experiencing anxiety, and it's a byproduct
and you're
of
feeling it.
And you're feeling it, right? So what is anxiety? It's thinking and worrying about the future. So mindfulness is present moment awareness. It's being here, being now, in this moment. Even if this moment is like the worst moment of your life, being fully present for it.
Okay.
And the way that the mind works is it wants to avoid discomfort. It doesn't like feeling, things that are hard or difficult. So we're going to use tools like distraction, and that can be a whole bunch of different things, from gambling to money to addictions to sex to any of the things that we can use to distract ourselves. But when we talk about mindfulness, it's coming back to here. So every session, there's a mindful moment when we're doing that breath together. And even if the thoughts are wandering, we bring it back. Same thing with depression. Depression within the Eastern viewpoint is we're thinking about the past.
Okay.
And we're angry either at ourselves and at somebody else for something that happened in the past. And so again, mindfulness is like, okay, that happened. And maybe you didn't fully feel that anger in that moment, and still it's stuck with you.
Yeah. And
so what mindfulness does in so many ways is it pulls us back into right now. And it's so cliche, but the present moment is a present.
Yeah.
For that
the past
for that
is
reason.
Gone, the future is not there yet.
Yes. 100%.
How do you bring someone to the present moment? Is there like a certain technique or a thought, or what do you tell your clients so they
there's
be grounded?
So there's a couple different ways. I like to use the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique, which is you find 5 things that you can see. You're using your senses. Using the senses is a really great way to bring you back into your body, into this moment.
Okay.
So you find 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can touch. I always mix this up in different ways. So today it's going to be this.
Okay.
4 things you can touch, 3 things you can feel. Right? So if you feel upset, you feel angry, you feel frustrated, 2 things that you can smell or taste, and then 1 thing that you can, I'm going to have to do that again.
Don't worry.
I know.
Start over.
Okay.
Just a little pause.
Yes. So I like to teach a grounding technique which uses the 5 senses. So with each sense, we find something in the room or something within ourselves to pull ourselves back into the present moment. It's really good if we feel ourselves dissociating, which basically means that we're not really in our body in that moment because something outside of us is triggering a strong emotion or strong reaction, or something inside of us is triggering that reaction. So we find 5 things that we can see, 4 things that we can touch, 3 things that we can smell. So if it's a candle in the room, if it's whatever the scent of the air is, if it's your pillow, 2 things that you can
taste.
Taste, yes. 2 things that you can taste. See, this is what happens is I always switch it up. Maybe I won't talk about this one. Maybe you could just edit out the grounding technique.
Too late.
Too late. It's gone. 2 things you can touch or taste, and then 1 thing that you can feel. So feeling angry or upset.
Works.
Yes, it helps. It helps the individual to come back into here and now. There's other techniques like EFT, which is emotional freedom technique, which is tapping, which is this practice where you're tapping different meridians, different energy points on your body. And what it does is it's a specific technique. You can Google it. You can find out more. There's even an EFT tapping app out there that you can use that will go through this practice where you're invoking these different meridians and you're moving the energy through your body. And every time I do it, I feel like I'm buzzing.
Oh, wow.
It creates like a physiological sensation for me, and some of my clients have that same experience.
That's interesting.
I love using that. It's a cool technique. It's aromatherapy, using this, using the scent as a way to bring us back into our bodies. I'll put a drop of peppermint oil onto one of my clients' hands. We sit there, we smell it, and that immediately, you're doing 2 things. Yeah, you're breathing, and you're also like pulling in a new sensation with that sense of smell, and you're creating a new experience within that moment in your body.
I love peppermint.
Yes. It's one of my favorite ones. It's like a pepper. I do the peppermint balm where it's just like, it wakes you up. It's like coffee in a little bottle, right?
Okay.
It's really powerful.
Nice.
Yep.
How can a holistic way help someone who is in recovery?
Sure. So when I was doing my yoga teacher training, so I'm trained in Kundalini yoga, which is called the yoga of awareness, which is all about present moment, which is all about, these different practices of like being in our body. There's specific meditations for addiction.
Oh, wow.
And so when we think about addiction, I always talk about this with my clients, even if they're not coming to see me for an addiction challenge that they're experiencing, I talk about, well, what's underneath the addiction? It's typically an emotion. We're either trying to avoid feeling an emotion or trying to numb an emotion.
Yeah.
And so there's specific meditations that were customized and created for creating a new habit pattern in our brain. This is where the research starts becoming like really interesting, where they can now with science like map out pre-meditation, post-meditation with a particular type of intervention. They can see these parts and areas of the brain changing because we're creating new neural pathways. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So when it comes to addiction, well, I will work with the clients that have addiction challenges. Obviously, the first step is to detox and to help them to get really stabilized in their body. But we then look at what's the emotion, what's going on that is caused you to use. Let's talk about the addiction. What did you get out of the addiction?
Yeah.
A lot of times we don't even talk about that. What was it like when you were using? Like what was that experience for you? What, for 5 minutes you didn't feel anything? Let's talk more about that. Can I show you a breathwork practice where maybe for 5 minutes you cannot feel anything? You can just be in your body.
Trying to achieve, right?
100%.
Most of the time.
Yes.
Just numb
Yes.
the pain or trauma or emotion, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can see how it could work.
It's a way of distraction. So with addictions, like we look at that, okay, what's the emotional addiction underneath the actual addiction?
Okay.
And then we can see and say, okay, so if you are emotionally addicted to, fear or anger or, relationships that maybe are not serving you, we have to reprogram that. It comes back to like, well, what were those patterns that you learned as a child? What were the programs that you downloaded and you weren't even aware that you were downloading? What was your mom talking to you about when you were a kid? What was your dad talking to you about when you were a kid? What are those habits that you're currently enabling right now in the present moment? And how can you in some ways step back and see and say, like, those weren't even mine to begin with. Those were my programs. I want a new program. It's like, you think about like when we used to, way back when we used to get computers, you would get a computer and you would have to plop in, I know I'm aging myself here.
No, I get it.
There were these things out there that were called like computer programs, CDs, like Windows 94, that you had to take the CD and you had to put it inside the computer and you downloaded the program because it didn't work without the download. The human mind is the same. So we download these programs from an early age. And then fast forward, we're 35 with an addiction to marijuana or to alcohol. Okay, well, let's look at the programming. And with the holistic interventions of using the breath and using meditation, we're able to access the subconscious so much quicker than just traditional talk therapy.
Yeah,
it just elevates it and just expedites that healing in a way that, I'm seeing these results in combining the meditation and the breath work with the talk therapy. Sometimes these experiences are pre-verbal and we have to heal them. We have to move through them in a different way.
Is there any treatment in particular that has worked the best for you? Or I guess, does it depend on the diagnosis?
Yes. So it depends on, 100% depends on the diagnosis. I think that what I've seen is the clients that get the most out of their treatment are the ones that have been able to break through some of these patterns and these programs through showing up for themselves. And the showing up is sitting down on that mat or sitting in bed and doing 3 minutes of breathing, 5 minutes of journaling, whatever it is, where it's just like every day, the only person that's going to show up for you is you. So I've seen that the clients that can tap into that and can realize like, okay, the only person that's going to show up for me is me. I'm going to do that breathwork practice that Rachel is talking about. And I record them for them. So then they hear my voice.
Oh, wow.
So then they're like, oh, it's kind of like Rachel's with me. Like whenever I need her, she's there. And that's the therapeutic relationship in action, right? Where it's not just some, I love Deepak and he's amazing, and we can listen to Deepak's like meditations, Deepak Chopra. For those of you that have not checked out his work, he's doing some pretty amazing things out there with his meditation challenges, but some people don't resonate with his voice. So I found that if I record the meditation or I record the breath work and I say to them, okay, this is your homework, is doing this work. Sitting
but they
down.
actually have to do the homework.
They have to do it, and I'm going to have a conversation with them. And it's just like, okay, so what showed up this week? What were your roadblocks? Oh, I forgot to set my alarm. Okay. So let's talk about that. Are you sleeping? Are you,
What's
it goes back
happening?
to, So what are the things that are showing up in your life that are kind of sabotaging you, or you're sabotaging
Yourself.
in some ways?
What can someone do to start that healing journey and connecting mind with body, like someone at home that might want to start that process before therapy?
I think that the first step is seeing and saying like, okay, like I'm ready to look at things a little bit differently, and just doing some research into, there's so much content out there now that you can explore all the different types of breath work out there and meditation. There's one of my favorite apps to use is Insight Timer. I don't know if you've ever checked that out. So it's a free app. And when you log on, it shows you how many people in the world at that moment are meditating.
Really?
That are
That's
using
very
the app
interesting.
and meditating.
Okay.
So it's just like, oh, there's other people out there that are doing this. Cool. I'm a part of this. I'm a part of this like collective community. And there is like anywhere from like 3-minute meditations on there and breathwork practices to hour-long breathwork and meditations. And it's just testing one out and seeing which resonates with you, and seeing and saying, okay, like I'm going to make a little bit of an experiment here. And I'm going to try out, a Wim Hof method, for instance, which is, a very intensive breathwork practice.
That's the one that makes you dizzy.
That makes you dizzy, that prepares you for, your body literally stepping into a very traumatic space of jumping into an ice cold pond,
My God.
But his stuff is pretty magical and it works for some people. Other people like a guided meditation. They want like maybe a relaxation meditation that goes through each body part.
They need some guidance.
A progressive muscle relaxation. So it's kind of like stepping back and saying to yourself, like, well, what do I think that I need right now? And let me try out that one meditation for like 3 to 4 days and see how I feel about it. That's always like where I start, and it's kind of like yourself best. And so if meditation breathwork isn't your thing, that's totally okay. Maybe journaling is.
Okay.
Maybe doing like a daily gratitude practice where you're writing out 5 things that you're grateful for in your life. And after the 5th day, it's really hard because it's like, I'm grateful that I can breathe. I'm grateful that I'm alive, but then you start to have like, you're then creating these neural pathways in your mind where you're like consciously then seeking out things to be grateful for.
Okay.
And when you're emitting that kind of frequency, we talk about emotions on a frequency, a gratitude frequency is really, really powerful and really, really healing.
And it could be the smallest thing. Like, I don't know, maybe you passed a test if you're an adolescent. Or maybe, I don't know, you didn't think you were going to do something and you were able to do it. And grateful for that. It could be anything.
Yeah.
That's important.
It could be just like that I woke up today.
Yeah.
you know, that like I have these legs that work,
Exactly.
you know, that I have these arms that, you know, I can give high five people.
We take that for granted until we see a sad
Until
video,
you
and then we're like, oh
Yeah.
my God, I'm gonna be so grateful, and then you forget about it.
And or something happens, right? Where it's just like you randomly lose the ability to use your leg. You have a sports injury, or you're walking down the street and you roll your ankle, and then for five weeks
so
you're in a
painful.
boot, you know? Like there's so many things that we do take for granted.
It always happens to me when I get a cold and I can't breathe. I'm like, oh my God, I miss breathing through my nose.
Yes. And then it's just like, when is this cold gonna move?
Exactly.
And then you remember like, wow, I did take that for granted. Okay, I can't do the breathwork practice Rachel is talking about because I can't breathe.
Exactly.
But you know, it's these little things that, you know, it's a very mindful way to move through life, finding these little moments that, you know, we do take for granted. Just slowing down.
How do you stay mindful on a day-to-day? What do you like to practice?
So I love hot vinyasa yoga. That is, if I could do that every day, I would. My schedule doesn't always allow for that, but at least 3-4 times a week, I like to do that practice, because it's like you're in your body and you are hot and you're sweating and you are a little uncomfortable.
Okay.
And there's something about like being in that space of discomfort that I think that we all are always trying to run away from. And I could get up and walk out of that yoga class if I wanted to, but I also know like that 2 of my friends in the corner are going to judge me. Just be like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, and at any moment I can always go into child's pose, which is like this
I use that a lot.
quintessential
I'm like,
pose
I don't
where
care, I need a break.
you're down on the floor and, you know, your head's on the floor, like your forehead's on the ground, and you are just like there. But
you keep going.
you keep going.
Which is the point.
You just push
Challenge
through
yourself.
it. Yeah. And then once you've gotten through it, you're like, I really felt uncomfortable in that posture, but I stood with it and I held myself and I felt my body in all of its glory and all those muscles that I needed to move to get into that posture. That's one of my favorites. I love to take moments in my day just to take some deep breaths. Just 5 deep breaths is a great reset. That in between a client, you know, I get up, I walk around.
Definitely in between clients.
In between clients, I have to.
reset.
There is a little patch of grass outside of my office that sometimes I'll walk out and just put my feet in the grass and kind of,
Ground
you know,
yourself.
ground myself literally into, you know, the Earth's electromagnetic field. It's really powerful. And I try to meditate every day. I try to stay with a consistent practice. I have to do it in the mornings. You know, I can't do it at night. I've tried a million times. It just doesn't work. So I kind of carve out time once I get to my office that, you know, I have my mat there and I sit down and I use that. So those are my go-tos. And then sometimes just trying to drink a lot of water is just like a mindful practice in and of itself. Just like we are basically houseplants with complicated emotions. We need to be hydrated.
Yeah, I'm not good at that one either. I need to get better with the water.
It's actually a yogic teaching. If you're angry, go drink a glass of water and then see how you feel after it. Anger is typically a emotional response to dehydration.
I thought it was when I didn't eat. As they call it, hangry.
Hangry.
It's water.
That too. Yeah.
Okay.
It's like a combination of them.
It's been a lovely conversation.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Is there any last message that you would want to tell our listeners in regards to holistic mental health, mindfulness, anything?
No. Well, I think that it's, you know, it's not as woo-woo as we all make it to be. You know, everybody thinks of like, oh my gosh, it's like, you know, holistic care means like you're walking in and you have bells and you're a hippie and like you have patchouli burning in the background and you're saging. I love sage and I love Palo Santo. I constantly use it in my space as a way to like cleanse the air and move the environment. But there's so much neuroscience and science behind these practices that is really, really powerful and is like, I think that we're going to see in the next like I hope in the
Yeah.
next 100 years that the way that we approach mental health is going to be through a holistic lens, because we are like diamonds. We
Yeah.
have multiple facets.
It's already happening.
Yes.
I feel that more people
Starting
are
to
talking
wake up
about
and
it.
shift.
A lot of people I've interviewed are talking about the
Mhm.
integration model
Yes.
and all that. So
Yeah.
I think it's wonderful. I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
It's the future.
It is the future. It's
Yeah.
I think we're ready for it. I don't think that we have 15 years to sit on the couch and figure out, you know, what our mom and dad did to us. You know,
Exactly.
like, we can't be victims anymore. We have to be empowered. And I think that holistic care offers that type of treatment.
Nice.
You know, gets in there,
Yeah.
cleans it out, and
Get rid
keeps
of
you
it.
moving. Yeah. So that you can find your
Yeah.
purpose, because we all have something that we are uniquely gifted with on this planet.
Exactly.
And if we move some of this programming out of the way, we can really tap into that.
You gotta move the energies.
Yes. And fix this world. Fix this.
Yeah.
Fix what we've done, so that
For so many years.
we can
It starts with
make
you.
it 100%.
Cliche.
It is,
But it's
super
true.
cliche, but it really is.
I
Yeah.
had to say it.
Yes.
Oh
Yes.
my God.
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
Sure. So I'm on socials. Head_and_heart collective is my practice. I have some amazing practitioners there that you'll find through social media, as well as my website is headandheartcollective.com. You can send me an email at rachel@headandheartcollective.com. And yeah, just see what we're all about. There's lots of info on our website. We send out weekly newsletters with lots and lots of free content, lots of holistic interventions, from journaling to meditation and breathwork practices.
Yeah.
So I'm all about sharing the info, and yeah, people
Sharing
can
is
find us
caring.
there. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Oh my
Yeah.
God. Well, thank you so much
Thank
again.
you. Thank you
I love
for
it.
having me.
We're going to have you back later on.
Anytime.
Keep talking holistic.
Yes. More holistic. There's lots and lots to cover
Great.
there. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a comment. All right. See you next week.